Wow. Well, thank you very much, Prof. That's amazing. I'm buggered, really, because after that fantastic, he had slides and everything. It was like pictures, and it was just all singing, all dancing. And what's worse, I'm in violent agreement with everything that he says. So there's no drama in disagreement, and it's the afternoon after lunch. You know, it doesn't get any worse. And I'm talking to people who got better A-levels than I did, and I just feel like going home, really, to be honest with you. And so I'm gonna have a chat, right? And I'm gonna ask you. I don't know whether I'm right in what I'm gonna say. I've got no idea. I hope that because I've got to talk and then get off, haven't I? So you can write to me, you can text me, right? VOA 1234. Tell me whether I'm wrong, right? Because I might be. But I want to talk to you about Turning Point a bit, and then I want to talk to you about, I guess, the inverse care law and a bit about primary care. I mean, I've had loads of people talk to me about primary care. One of them's in the front row. Hello, Nikki. You're not going to get away without pointing. Has been telling me about primary care, but I want to talk about it from sort of the experience of the people who basically told me I've got to come and do this talk. Because every time somebody invites me to do a talk, it goes to my people and I ask them, do you think I should do this? And they're all called general practitioners, invited me, and I asked our doctors, and they said, yeah, you've got to go and talk. So here I am, basically. We should get something out of the way. When it said I think it might have said Lord Victor Adebowale, all that, people worry about whether to call me, what to call me. I know you do. You'd be thinking, what do I call him, right? So I think I'm amongst friends, and I've got a friend in the front, so you should just all refer to me as Lord Victor Adebowale. CBE. So, because you're all doctors, so bugger you, you know. So I want to tell you about Turning Point. So I've been at Turning Point 17 years, and we started off with, we had a turnover of about 20 million pounds. We would turn over about 126 million. We work with people at the sharp end of the inverse care law, right? So those people who don't know about the inverse care law, Julian Tudor Hart, he was a doctor, came up with this notion that people in need of health and social care the most tend to get it the least, right? And that's kind of true, right? We specialise in mental health, substance misuse, learning disabilities. We run some specialist primary care services for people with severe, well, just complex needs, homelessness, personality disorders, the lot. We see 77,807 people, it says here, a year in 296 locations. And I employ about 3,500 staff, something like that. And I've got pharmacists and nurses and general practitioners and addiction psychiatrists, consultant psychiatrists. You know, we have a real smorgasbord of expertise working with these people. And we work, our mission, I suppose, it aligns with my mission. It's to reverse the inverse care law. It's as simple as that. And what we know, and this is the thing that I want to test with you, because I don't understand it, right? I sit on the board of NHS England. I speak to you. I should say this, in case there's people from NHS England in the audience. Everything I'm going to say to you from now on, right, is my personal opinion. I'm not, it's like those things that they say at the bottom of financial adverts, you know, really quickly. Anything I say now must not be taken as representative of NHS England, Turning Point, or anybody else. These views are personal. Yeah, all that sort of stuff, right? So it's my view, I think I've got the evidence to say this, in the 70th year, we've celebrated 70 years of the NHS, right? And it's my view that an organisation, a system designed by people who are poorer than anyone you've ever met or are likely to meet, if you believe the standard story of how the NHS was started, in a place called Tredegar in Wales, right? People poorer than you, anybody in this room was ever likely to meet, and certainly less qualified than everybody, including the prof, right? Established a service for poor people, run by poor people, right? Because they were dying. They were dying in work, out of work, and they couldn't afford people like you. Right? Poor people established a service for poor people from which the middle classes, that's us. I love being middle class. I love it. The pine scatter cushions, they're lovely. Right? The acceptance of things, I mean, just wonderful things that the middle class people do. The way we all worry about our kids' education. You know, we really worry about it. We drive past the local comprehensive school worrying about our kids, and we send them to the private school. My kids go to the local comp, just in case you're wondering. So it becomes an obsession. And house prices, property porn, all that stuff, right? We've benefited. We've benefited from a system designed by poor people, for people, to which the middle classes and the wealthy have benefited, right? Let me continue this hypothesis. For the first time in 70 years, that's a reverse, right? And I'll tell you why. You look at the stuff that Marmot's producing. The increases in life expectancy have stalled. And in places where Turning Point works, and we work in the poorest areas with the poorest people, it's going backwards, right? It's going backwards. And in those places and everywhere else, people say, well, in Kensington and Chelsea, it doesn't really matter, but Chelsea's got the poorest, North Kensington, right? Active life expectancy, the gap between middle-class people and poor people, well, if you're middle class, you're playing golf on that golf course that my colleague there just showed you, till you're 70. I meet them all the time. They're running the BBC, right? They're running NHS England. They're chilling, they're relaxed, they look fit, healthy, beards like mine, silver foxes, right? 70 years old, fit as a fiddle, because you're middle class, right? If you're poor, it's 50. You're starting to get ill at 50. 20 years. I don't know about you, but I am outraged by that, because the NHS was designed to do the opposite. We should all be, whether you work in an area where, it's not really a problem, right? Let me take it out of the moral for a second, right? Let's say you happen to work as a GP in an area where it's just lovely, right? Just lovely. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Nothing wrong with that. You work in an area where it's just lovely. Everybody's just great, right? They're kind of healthy, and when they're not healthy, they're still, they come to your surgery, but they've almost cured themselves before they arrive. The kind of people that use GP at hand. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. I'll talk a bit about GP at hand in a second, but GP at hand, anyway. Lovely people, right? Lovely people. Even if you don't give a damn, morally, you are a cold-hearted son of a sort, or daughter of a sort. Let me tell you this, and this is because I'm talking to GPs, and I keep putting forward this one piece of research, and I'm terrible. This is why I'm not an academic. It was done by York University Centre for Health Economics, right? Anybody who wants to see, I'll send you out the paper, right? And they looked at the poorest areas in the country, and they looked at what it actually costs, what poor people actually cost the system, right? And they worked out that the cost of not providing the sorts of services that Turning Point provides, and other organisations, but of course Turning Point's the best. Got to be honest, right? The cost of not providing those services downstream in communities. And let me give you an example of what I mean before I give you the answer, right? So I visit our services. We do county-wide services, Leicestershire actually. Yeah. We've got the mental health crisis service. We've got the substance misuse service, right? I walk into our service and there's a guy. This is a standard. Some of you may have heard me say this before. If you have, sorry, but here we go. Walk in. There's a guy coughing his lungs out, right? Coughing away. I'm sure that's not an acceptable diagnosis on your medical paper, but And this guy's had a drug and alcohol habit for 15 years. Right? In and out, he's poor, all this. And I say to our doctor, and we employ, 20 of them, crikey, what's wrong with him? The doctor says, well, I don't know, but, probably bronchitis, I'll have a look, like you do. And I say, because I'm not medically qualified, but I think, bronchitis, great, antibiotics, right? And he says, well, no, I can't. We can't do that. We don't have a contract with the CCG to do that kind of thing. So I say, well, where's he going to go? He said, well, we'll refer him to his GP. I look at the doctor and I say, well, do you think he's got one? The doctor says, probably not. I said, well, if he has got one, is he going to go? He said, probably not. So where's he going to go? A&E. That's where he's going to go. And I say, well, how many times does this happen? And he says, well, I don't know. We've got 3,000 people maybe, in and out, 2,800 times. No, that's true. And when I think that person is going to be going to A&E in winter, right? Do you know how much it costs, whether you care about this stuff or not, the NHS to not deal with people like that in the communities where they live? It's about 4.6 billion quid. 25% of the 20 billion that we're supposed to be saving. So even if you don't care, right, when you leave this hall, you're paying for it through the nose. Inequality and inequity costs. And the question I have for you is this, really, because I'm not that smart. You're probably working that out for yourselves. Why isn't it the centre and core of all health and social care policy debate? Why isn't it? Why isn't it the core? Because I don't know about you, but I think that's why you're here, right? That's why you're here. And it drives me crazy that it's not the core. Because in 20 years' time, that's how the impact of the NHS is going to be measured, because we're going to be paying more and more for not dealing with that issue. I've got 7 minutes and 56 seconds left to say the following things. Oh, en passant, I said I'd mention GP at hand. I happen to, I know quite a lot about technology. I found out quite a lot about it, and I'm actually involved in a company myself. So often when you talk about poverty, people think you're the left of Lenin or something. You're anti-rich people. I'm not. I just think we can do both because we're kind of civilized, right? But GP at hand, nothing wrong with them. Lovely people, right? We just don't know whether it bloody works, right? Firstly. Secondly, we should be very worried about two things. One, if you're GP at hand and you end up with 2 million clients on your books, whether you're good or not, you end up telling the NHS what to do. Because we don't have a plan. Not a clear one. Not one that says the system needs this from technology in order to work with these people and reverse the inverse care law. If you can help us do this, and we can work with you to test it and show it works, come on in, right? That's the question. If we allow the technology industry to tell us both the question and the answer, we are stuffed. And I'll tell you something else. If you want to back me up, I'll give you the recommendation of a book to read, and I can never remember the title. He's got this. But you'll find this book on Amazon. It's a book called Bad Blood. Some of you may have read it. It's a cracking read, and it just about summarizes in about 200 pages what I've said. But after page 20, you will be on the internet researching whether it's true or not. Let me tell you, every single word of it is true. And that's what we need to guard against. So, I've now got 6 minutes, 1 second to tell you the rest of what I need to tell you. So, primary care. You are at the forefront of the inverse care law revolution. You know, you are the people, in my view, that are going to protect and engage the future of the NHS in its core purpose, which, as far as I'm concerned, is reversing the inverse care law. These are the things that I think you could be doing and should be doing that are going to help with that, practically going to help with that. You should be involved in developing social enterprises. Why? Because social enterprises are proven to work and employ those people from the poorest areas. In Leicester, the social enterprise that runs the primary care practice doesn't have any problem recruiting GPs, despite the premium. Because the people that work for that social enterprise are involved in the share of profit and in the design of the service. So they've abandoned the kind of partner, non-partner stuff. 2, you should look at networks, GP networks. I'm really impressed with some of the work that I saw that you sent me a slide pack, Nikki, and I looked at it and I understood it, which is great. But what it's telling me is that actually when GPs come together to focus on population health, you start being the seed of understanding that can drive what things like integrated care systems and all the other panoply of stuff that falls out like rain actually should be doing in a place. And there's evidence that it actually makes your jobs easier. And believe me, your jobs are hard enough because you're sharing the challenge. I think you should have, and I don't know whether you've got this, I'm saying this in front of Helen Stokes-Lampard, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I think you've got a lot more to say about how we use technology. And I think one of the principles of what you should be saying about how we use technology, well, it should be 2 principles. 1, it should reverse the inverse care law, and it should do that by bringing the NHS to the individual, not the other way around, and that's possible. And secondly, you should co-produce it. It should be an and methodology, because what we know is that when technology is forced down the line, people tend to reject it, particularly if they're smart, and you're smart. And I think the final thing that you should be doing is, you know, I will always speak on behalf of those people at the sharp end of the inverse care law. My mum was a nurse for 40 years. I grew up in Wakefield. You know, poverty, you don't forget it, right? At least I don't, right? I think you need to help the policymakers answer the question, because at the moment they have a choice. Do we have a generalist response, health and social care? Do we focus on improving or decreasing the life chances gap, or do we try and do both? And there's a kind of silence. Then the report comes down like manna from heaven. And everybody kind of, well, it depends how fast you want to climb the career ladder. He says it's wonderful or ignores it. I think you should be taking the argument about the inverse care law to the policymakers. Because I know that that's what you really want to do. And you need to take the moral argument and the economic argument to them. It's not a political issue. This is common sense. This is about the future of the NHS. This is about making the argument to the people outside the room, you know, about why the NHS matters. It's reminding them that the reason why the NHS is a religion in this country, in the UK, is because we remember that it's one of the few services that we created. It wasn't created in Whitehall. It was created in Tredegar. I just want to say one more thing before I end, and I'm saying this on behalf of, I'm saying this personally, I guess, to you. And I'm sure people say this to you all the time, but I'm just going to say it because I want to say it to the GPs and the people who work in our primary care services. I just want to say thank you. I know how many of you put your lives on hold because you really care. That should never be taken for granted. I know how passionately you feel about the patients that you see, and actually those patients that you can't see well enough. I know the emotional strain that many of you are facing, and I know that doesn't always get a voice. I know that Helen does a brilliant job. We were at the both party conferences. What fun. What fun. But I just wanted to say to you, from one son of a nurse, right, thank you. Thank you. There's more to do. But without you, the NHS, it just won't exist. It just won't exist. So we need your leadership. But I want to thank you for just keeping going, for using those brilliant A-levels to create the future on behalf of the people who aren't in this hall. Thank you very much.